Hey, welcome to Stephen McGrath's Basscraft. So, I know I've mentioned a few times that I think working on slap bass is a waste of time. Well, if I only mean that in the context if you want to become a more employable bass player, it's one of the skills you least need to have, but it's actually still a lot of fun. So I've been messing around with the double bass or double thumping lately, and I used to do it a lot as a teenager, and it's fun to re-explore it and do some kind of... Well, I never actually learned how to do double thumping because I always slapped like Flea with my thumb down. But now I'm relearning how to slap with the thumb up, and you can get some interesting sounds and cool bass lines that you couldn't have done the other way. So I could do something like this. So yeah, you just have a nice bit of control when you're doing that double thumping, so it doesn't have to be as stereotypical slappy the bass kind of thing. Anyway, I'm not really a master at it now, but I get a bit of crack out of it. So today's guest is Joe Furlong, and he's one of the most in-demand session players in Ireland. And that's definitely true because I've seen him on the telly, which is the benchmark for success in Ireland. I've seen him, I think, 4 or 5 times already this year. I've seen him on The Late Late, Tommy Tiernan, Nationwide, and some other stuff. So he's the guy people call when they need someone for a session. He plays with loads of Irish acts, but his main gig is with James Vincent McMorrow, and that has brought him all over the world. He's played later with Jools Holland, KCRW, Jimmy Kimmel, the Sydney Opera House, all these things. But after the chat with Joe and editing, I was kind of thinking, what makes you a good session player? And I think it's just one of the main attributes is being a people person. So I think these session guys, they get to know the person. They're concerned about getting to know the person more than the musician in a genuine way. And I think that comes across in the interview, because at one stage Joe was interviewing me because it was supposed to be all about him, but it's just his nature to be a people person and want to get to know people. So you get to know a bit about me in this episode, and thanks Joe for asking those questions. That was cool. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, and as usual, like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to support me, you can jump on my shop, buy one of my Basscraft t-shirts, and see you in a minute. Yeah, we all have stuff, sure. I just figured out before you came on what's causing... I'm getting all these clips when I'm recording, and I just figured out it's my central heating. Every time the boiler kicks in, it caused like a giant clip in Logic. No way. Yeah, so I've been trying to figure it out since July, so pretty happy to figure it out today. Now. I was turning off everything in the house, and only having electricity in here, and I was like, what is it? I just can't figure it out.
That's wild.
But I must tell the girlfriend, turn off the fucking heat, and you'll have to freeze for an hour or two. But so I was asking about you were posting up a lot of those repetitive 90s bass lines, and what is it you kind of get out of them? Because I wouldn't really have dived into that myself much, because you can't dive into everything, but I definitely will explore it and try and get into it.
I think it's really just down to the fact that those bass lines and those like classic 90s dance songs are usually just like tiny little samples, and I just think it's fascinating when you can have something so small and so repetitive. I mean, it's kind of the whole ethos of dance music, but like just something so repetitive, just grooving so well and just makes people want to dance. And that's the reason why I wanted to play bass in the first place, was because you have the ability to make people dance with just that instrument,
And have you done any gigs at like big festivals with a kind of, where you were playing the bass for a kind of a dance project with a guy in a laptop or something like that?
No, but I've played with this cover band called Robot Rock, who do like their main set is like classic 90s and early 2000s dance tunes. Like
that's class for a bass player. That's brilliant.
Oh man, it's so much fun. The first gig I ever did with them, actually, they wanted to do Discovery, the Daft Punk record, from start to finish live, which was actually a really interesting challenge for me, because obviously a lot of the bass parts on that record are sampled from random records here and there, but there's also some huge bass lines on the Daft Punk stuff. But the most fun I had in that whole time was there's a couple of songs where literally, I'm not even sure there's bass on the record as such, but it's just like there's tuned kick drums. So all you're doing is playing quarter notes to the kick, just dun 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 dun, and just locking into that, and like you just basically following the route, and just locking into that was the most fun. So the robot rock stuff is always really fun.
And is it hard to replicate those Daft Punk tones, like, or do you just use your P-bass sound no matter what?
What I did for that show was I have got like a 75 P-bass. I have a Mexican jazz, and then I have this Music Man, the 5-string Music Man sub, which is my first bass. So I kind of changed bass depending on what was needed for the song, but I also had a bunch of different pedals that I had set up. Because with a lot of the Daft Punk songs in particular, the dynamic happens throughout the song by just like filtering the low end out of the kick or the low end out of the bass synth or the
side chaining, that kind of thing, is it?
Exactly, yeah. But even just sections where like the bass is scooped out all together for like 4 bars or 8 bars. So I had like a Boss EQ pedal with like a low end boost. I borrowed a Line 6 pedal from Connor King actually, to use a filter on that as a high pass filter, so all the low end comes out. So when I stepped on that, it's just really high end, tinny, horrible sounding, but it works in context, you know.
Yeah.
So it was just a case of having different pedals to jump through all those dynamics, because it's not a case of just playing louder. It's a case of actually like pulling all the low end out of your bass or boosting all the low end in your bass. So
yeah, it's like,
it was a good challenge.
It's like if there was just a guy in a laptop, he'd just be doing that low filter thing for certain sections to get that whooshy kind of sound, and then it would come back in a drop. Is that what they call it?
That's
is
exactly
that the lingo?
what it is, yeah. It's funny that you say that though, because I've one thing that's kept me going for the last year, myself and my friend David Curley, who was the bass player in a band called Otherkin.
I know the band.
Bass players.
Good, really good kind of rockin' Dublin
rock band. Yeah. Yeah. Well, David has set up a deadly new studio called The Clinic, and basically he's kind of set up with a view to kind of being like the best electronic studio in the country, I guess. He's got like, you know, all the classic synthesizers you could ever want. But we ended up working together and making a load of music, dance music basically. And it was just interesting, I think, the process of us making dance music, you know, within the world of looking at those guys as, you know, the lads there twiddling the dials.
I know. I've been doing a bit of beat making myself, and I'm total amateur. And newfound respect for people that do that. Like when you jump in and try to do it yourself, it's like it's a different world. Like, you know. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, it's funny. I remember being a kid, and I was really into Nirvana at the time, and a friend of mine was into dance music, and I was like, "Why would you listen to that? You're like, you know, any guy with a computer can make that. You know, there's no talent in that." And I was quite wrong. But it's funny that this is where I am now.
It's kind of the same. Any guy with a bass or guitar can play the guitar, but only certain people can make good music. So the same with the laptop, you know.
Yeah. It's just another instrument, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, has a serious palette of sounds though, which can be daunting. Like when you open up one of those DAWs, it's like you've thousands of sounds at your fingertips. Like,
yeah. What I find is you always come back to this. Once you find the things you like, you always come back to them. You know.
And when will we see that project? When will it see the light of day?
This year at some point. We basically have an album. We made an album over the course of the year, which is getting mixed this week. So, like, for me, my goal is to continue to be a session musician, a touring session musician. David's goal is to continue with his studio and making this studio a success. So, although we would like the project to be successful, it's not you know, the be all and end all. But we do want to try and do it the right way and see if we can get some label interest in it. So I think things will hopefully start to trickle out in the summer, I'd say.
So is that
it's music that is made to make people dance and for people to dance to, you know. So it kind of doesn't make any sense to do it while everything's still locked down and nobody can dance.
You need a field and so people can get drunk and dance or pop around, like.
Basically, yeah.
But it's funny you say that you want to remain a session musician. So is that the road you've consciously wanted to be in? You decided not to be the bass player in one band, and that's your thing. You want to be like a session guy playing a bunch of projects all the time. Yeah,
pretty much. I went to BIMM when I was 23. So that was 9 years ago now. And when I first started out in BIMM, I thought that it would be a case of, I'll meet some people and we'll start a band. And that did happen. But I was getting, my lecturers were Paul Moore, who's Van Morrison's MD, Robbie Malone, who plays David Gray, and then Keith Farrell, who plays with bloody everybody. So I kind of realized that a career as a session musician was actually a tangible thing and an achievable thing, because I never would have kind of crossed my mind beforehand. Obviously, I would have known of all the greats, with Jamerson, etc. But never would have thought that it would be something that I could do. But just from playing with loads of different people in BIMM, I realized it was something that I was good at, and just decided to make a stab at that.
And you started as a metal guy. That's what you were into back in the day, like.
Yeah. I first started playing guitar when I was about 12 or 13. I was really into Metallica mainly, like metal and grunge, I guess. So, from the ages 12 to 16, I was in my bedroom with my crappy Aria Strat ripoff and a tiny little amp, or eventually upgrading to like a Marshall MG30, and just playing through Master Puppets and playing any Metallica riff that I could learn. I was never, I could never solo. I was never a lead guy, but I eventually became a decent at rhythm, which I guess. Well, obviously
James Hetfield is like the king of metal rhythm playing, so that's decent.
That's it, yeah. But it meant that I kind of transitioned then when my friend's metal band needed a bass player, and because they already had two guitar players. It's the usual story. I think this is the origin story for about 90% of bass players.
Yeah, it is.
Was it the same with you?
Yeah. No, actually, I went straight to bass, but okay. I just, any instrument would do. I just wanted to be, like, I was kind of one of those kids. I played sports, but I didn't really like playing sports, and I was looking for a new thing, and I tried to get into programming computer games, and I was terrible at that. So then some lads were playing music, so I said I'd give that a go, and they said if you play the bass you'll get in a band, so I got a lend for the bass. That was it.
Well, that's the thing, there's always a billion guitar players. Even when I was studying in BIMM, I think there was like 13 bass players in my year, and there was, I don't know, 50 guitar players or 60 guitar players or something like that.
Yeah, you'll definitely get work as a bass player, always, totally. Hopefully.
Yeah, but I think it gives you more time than playing with people and playing with more people, so it helps hone your craft in that way, I think, anyway. I was big into metal when I was around 17 or 18. I was like big into bands like Avenged Sevenfold and stuff like that, and then just kind of slowly over the years my tastes mellowed a bit, I suppose you could say.
I still have a real soft spot for Metallica, but I think I was reading some paper or psychology thing. Whatever music you're listening to as a teenager, how your brain is developing so much at that time. It's like deep rooted in your neurons that you love that music and you think it's the best ever. And no matter, it's not subjective, right? And it's just, you are loving it no matter what. So I still listen to Metallica, and I can't get enough of it whenever I put it on,
Yeah, I've definitely had the same experience with that. And when Tool brought out their most recent album last year, I went and listened to it, and I was like, this is not good.
I didn't like that album at all either, though. And I still love all the old albums.
But it made me question whether I actually loved all those old albums legitimately, or whether it was just like nostalgia. But then I went and listened to them, and I was like, no, these all still absolutely smash. They still stand up. Like,
I'm the same with Chili Peppers, because I loved them, but it's kind of a meme in the music thing online saying Red Hot Chili Peppers are terrible. But anytime I listen to Blood Sugar Sex Magic, I still think it's one of the best albums ever made. Like, I can't get enough of it.
I kind of missed that wave. I missed the Chili's. I never really listened to them. I knew Californication and stuff like that, but like the early really funky stuff I never really listened to. And a couple of months back I was trying to learn oh god, what's it called? Terra Power track. What is Hip? Do you know that song?
No, I don't know. Did Chili's do a cover of it, or?
No, but like it's Rocco Prestia on bass, who he died last year, and just his stamina at like fingerstyle, like 16 notes, is insane. So What is Hip is like 16 notes kind of throughout. And I posted a video on my story on Instagram of me like playing it at like 90% speed or 95% speed or something like that. And Neil Dorrington, I don't know if you know Neil.
No.
He's an amazing bass player. He's playing a band called Bark. He staying with Denise Chila, I think, at the moment.
Oh, I know that band. Yeah, I think we did a gig with them one time. Did they have a cover project and an original project?
Yeah.
I played with the cover project once. They were really good.
Gin and Juice.
Yeah, I think it was them. He's class bass player. Yeah.
Yeah, Neil's amazing. But he sent me. He was like, actually, if you want to, improve your 16-note finger style or jump in octaves, here's this Chili song. Oh, and here's this Chili song for this. And he's like, and all of them just went back to like classic Chili songs that I completely passed me by. And I was like,
that's what taught him how to do it back in the day.
Yeah. Well, when I was like crying listening to Radiohead in my early 20s, I would have been better off listening to Chili's instead.
I missed all. I actually have. I was rooting through my old stuff, and I have the ticket stub to Chili Peppers live at Slane.
Way.
So yeah, I was a big fan, but I don't really listen to them much anymore. I'm reading Flea's biography at the moment, and it's really good. It's weird the way it's written. It's like there's like 2 pages in each chapter, so like the book has a ridiculous amount of tiny chapters. It's like 2 pages, and then there's a new heading, 2 pages. That's kind of the formula of it. And it's very Flea the way it's done. Like
he's amazing though in general. Like aside from his bass playing, obviously he's a great trumpet player as well and actor. Yeah,
he was in Back to the Future. What was the thing with the dude? The Big Lebowski. He's in loads of great films.
Yeah, just turns up randomly when you don't expect him at all.
Yeah, I think he talks about that in the book. He was doing that kind of before Chili's hit. He was doing the acting almost a bit more, like.
Right.
But I didn't get to the end of it yet, so no juicy stories. It's still only the child. He hasn't even started playing bass yet, so I need to get into it a bit more.
I was talking to my friend Jake the other day. This is going to feel like I'm just dropping names all the time, but I mean I'm sure there's loads of people in the industry that we know. Even though we've never met before.
Ireland is tiny, like, you know.
Jake Curran is who I'm talking about, guitar player. Do you know Jake?
I don't know. I probably have met him. Like, I've been in CB State Crow Black Chicken for like 10 years, and we do like over 100 gigs a year up and down Ireland. So we meet everyone eventually.
But he was talking about Anthony Kiedis' book, The Scar Tissue.
I read that. That's really a really good biography. Yeah, I was saying yourself and Connor King, you're both like, you came up as 2 really in demand session fellas in Ireland, and I don't think it's a coincidence that you both play like synth bass as well as normal bass. Yeah,
I think in the session world it's about versatility, and so kind of just being able to do everything. Because if like I work as a musical director as well, and if it's a choice between hiring somebody who can do one thing or hiring somebody who can do 2 things pretty well, it's usually that person's going to get the job every time. So I think the main reason I got into playing synth bass was because I got the gig with James Vincent McMorrow. So I knew that there was going to be some synth bass stuff on that, so I had to kind of get down to it. And I bought a Moog Sub Fatty like 5 years ago now, and just kind of got used to it. Because what I liked about that synth in particular was that it doesn't have like a screen. So with some of the other ones, like with the Little Fatty, there's a screen and you can save like 150 presets or something like that. Whereas the Sub Fatty only has 16 presets, like 4 banks of 4. So it meant that it forced me to learn how to synthesize bass sounds rather than just like flicking through all the presets.
No, that makes complete sense. Like it's you just when there's too many options, and presets, you won't learn anything, because there's a lot to that, learning about all them waves and how the attack and the release and all that stuff, like.
Yeah, Connor's really, really great for that as well. I think he plays a Novation bass station, and he's definitely at it. Like I think in general he probably practices way more than I do. Anyway, I'm really bad when it comes to practice, and a lot of the time my practice will be like when I'm in the rehearsal room with the band. If I'm playing with somebody new, obviously I have to spend time learning their music or whatever. But it's rare that I sit down and practice. But the synth bass thing.
Would you say getting good at synth bass is more about understanding the sounds than getting fast and too crazy fluid with your fingers? It's more about understanding how to make the sounds, like.
Totally, yeah, because like in the modern pop kind of world, you're not really ever going to be playing some mad like Michael Jackson, Greg Fillingane's like synth bass part. You're just going to be playing the root note. You're just going to be playing the one. You're effectively kind of filling in for where like an 808 would be on a record. So it's about knowing how to make those sounds, as you say. Yeah, that's way more important.
And what does to you like being a musical director mean? Because I've had other people on talking to them, and it's kind of different opinions. Like some people say you're like a parent, you're stopping people from disappearing on the tour, messing or whatever. And other people say you have to make all the sheets, and other, like, it's kind of ambiguous to me. Like what's it mean? Yeah. So what does it mean to you being a musical director?
I think it's definitely it is a fluid thing. Most of my experience of doing it have been within the context of this New Year's Eve show. It's called Turning Pirate Mixtape, that happens at Vicar Street every year. And I've done that for like 6 years now, where there's a house band and then like loads of kind of big name Irish singers like Lisa Hannigan and Paul Noonan and people like that come through. And usually it's like it's basically just like a party. So it's a mixture of covers, and then they do some original songs as well. So for me, that was just always about picking the best musicians, but also picking people who are sound, picking people who know that you will be working long hours in prep for it, and there'll be an absolute ton of music to learn for it, but it'll all be worth it because you get to spend, 4 or 5 hours on stage on New Year's Eve just having the crack, basically, and playing deadly songs. So I've never really had to do any like prepping lead sheets for people. I kind of, it's basically like it's management, Yeah. And it's delegation. So it's making sure that people who are involved know what they need to be doing. Like I'll do a lot of prep. I'll always go to town with like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet of like all the song information. If there's a change of key from what the original version is, all that kind of stuff. And because I know everybody who's involved in the gig is good enough to just go away and learn it. Yeah. That I don't need to go and make up the charts for them. So, I mean, I'm lucky in that respect, but also I put myself in that position by picking those people, if that makes sense.
And do you play bass for the whole show as then in the house band?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. So I was like the band leader. But like the gig will start at 8:30 and finish at like 1:30.
It's class. Wild. It's like Allman Brothers at the Phil Maurice, like playing all night.
Totally, yeah. But it's like, it's usually like 35 songs between maybe 8 guests. And because the Christmas period is normally so mental for gigs, what we'll do is we'll meet up as a house band. It's normally like a 14-piece house band. So we'll meet up as a house band maybe a week or two before Christmas and just break the back of the songs together. Just like tops and tails, basically, how we'll get into songs and how we get out of songs. And then between Christmas and New Year's Eve, so usually like the 28th and 29th, there'll be 2 12-hour days booked in a rehearsal studio somewhere. Each singer will have like an hour and a half to come in and rehearse the songs with the band. And then on New Year's Eve, we get into Vicar Street at like 10 a.m. Everything gets set up over the course of a couple of hours, and then the singers come in from 1 and we run the whole show. So it's intense, but
that's hardcore. So that's a long day. A lot of coffee needed to get on that day. Did you ever find drinking Red Bull or drinking coffee affects your tempo? Because I'm not a big coffee drinker, but when I was on tour in Spain, they love espressos and all that. Yeah. And one night, just before I went on stage, your man hit me with 2 or like it must have been a triple espresso or some shite, and it was so hard. It was like being drunk or something. I could feel myself swaying.
Going mental.
I just wanted to go fast all night. And the drummer had him as well, like, and we were both flying through the songs. And the singer was running out of breath. He was kind of like, Jesus, what's wrong with you tonight? Slow the fuck down.
I'm not a big coffee drinker, thankfully. And I don't think caffeine really has that much of an effect. I drank a lot of Coke when I was like in my teens. Way too much. And I don't really get a buzz from drinking like a Red Bull or a Monster energy drink. Like if I'm driving home from a cover gig or a wedding gig at like 2 or 3 in the morning and I'm exhausted, I'll stop and get one of those. But I haven't had that experience, thankfully.
I've forgotten what that's like now. You know that you've been driving for like 6 or 7 hours. It's like 6 in the morning. Your eyes are hanging out of your head. You're kind of swaying back and forth. Like it's going to be weird to go back to that.
Yeah. Do you think that for like how long do you think it'll take to get back to that? Jesus, another wedding.
Oh God,
I think it'll be a long time. Everyone's going to be so grateful for just kicking again.
I don't know. I think this perspective has changed. Like I don't really want to do that as much anymore. That
Did you do a lot of wedding gigs?
Never. We done a few because I'm in an original band really, and I do a bit of depping with a Hector Castilla. He's like a Mr. Castle. He's like a Venezuelan blues guitarist from Dublin.
Deadly.
But we've done a few weddings for fans, like, but that was all. So I never was in the wedding scene. But we do, like, sometimes we might play in Portrush, which is at the top of Ireland, and we'd come from Tipperary and Cork, play the gig and drive home. So you get home around 7 in the morning, like, so I've done the long drives.
Yeah, that's rough.
But I don't know whether I want to go back to it. That's what I'm saying. I think after all this break, a lot of us are changing our perspective, and we might think about our health a bit more, like, and you might say, is it worth driving for that long and staying up that long, or just hurting your body for £100? When I do lessons and other stuff, I say I could make £100 doing that just at home and not go and do that. And your cachet, like, or your value as a band, as an original band, goes down when you're always on the scene, and people then they're just like, sure, I'll see them again, or they're always around. So
totally.
I think a lot of people are changing, but it's different for wedding bands. They have to be going all the time. Yeah.
I was never actively, like, in a wedding band, but I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years depping for wedding bands and stuff like that. Just because it's when you're off tour, like, I started touring with James in summer of 2016, and when you're away for a year and a half, everybody thinks you're away then forever. So when you get home, you have to, like, go find all the gigs again.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to kind of supplement that when you're not touring. But yeah, I don't know. I was never really big on like, if somebody asked me to dep a wedding in Kerry or something like that, unless, not that it's all about the money, but, you know, the bills have to get paid. So unless the money was really good, I would more often than not say no, because I don't want to drive for 5.5 hours.
Exactly.
And as you say, get home at 7 o'clock in the morning, you know.
It takes a toll on, you know, all those late nights. Is it weird for you, like, going from, was it with Vincent that you played the Sydney Opera House?
Yeah.
So you're playing the Sydney Opera House one week, and then the next week you're playing in Ballycotton for someone's wedding or something. Is that a weird, like, juxtaposition?
I think you just have to appreciate the things while you're in the moment, you know. I think the first tour with James, or that first year and a half, I was very what's the word? I was pretty, like, chill about it all. Because obviously, like, when I started playing guitar at 12, 13 years of age, I wanted to be, you know, a rock star, as everybody does. But by that I mean, like, I wanted to go and play music around the world. And here I was at 27 doing it. But I was like, well, this is my job. It's, you know, it's like, it's just the equivalent of somebody going to the office. And it's not really. It's not really. Kind of
but we like to say that, but you can't really have a beer in the office. It's slightly different.
True, yeah. Well, I don't know. I just kind of, I felt that I had put the work in order to be there, and that I deserved to be there, and was quite kind of lax about it. And I actually regretted it, like a year later when I hadn't been touring for ages, or we'd been off tour with James rather, and I regretted not kind of embracing the moments a bit more. When we played the Sydney Opera House, I did, like, think, shit, this is Sydney Opera House.
What's it like inside? Is it, like, well fitted out for a gig, like? Oh
yeah. Well, there's 2 or 3 different rooms in there. So, like, we were sitting backstage in, like, in the catering area. It was huge. And, you know, the call comes along on the radio for the people of the James Vincent McMorrow Company. This is your 5-minute stage call. That kind of thing, you know. So it was more like a theater kind of world. But no, it was amazing. But yeah, not every gig can be the Sydney Opera House. And I'll tell you, when we finished with him in October 2017, we finished that tour, and then I had a few bits to carry me over into Christmas and New Year's, and then there was nothing for 3 months, and I was so depressed because I'd put all my worth in being a session musician and playing music, and I wasn't doing it. And I got a call to do a gig in the middle of March, and I remember going into the rehearsal room and the guitar player complaining about having to lift his big amp in out of the boot of the car, and I was like, man, I'm so happy, I'm so glad to be lifting gear into a rehearsal room right now. So as you say, it's the perspective that changes all the time. I think in terms of me being kind of a bit blasé about playing places like Sydney Opera House, playing on in-ears, I find, kind of, because it removes you from the room.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why I wasn't as appreciative as I should have been, because it just takes you out of the room a little bit. So that's my excuse.
You could get one of those. I haven't got one yet, but I've heard good things about those bass kicker. Drummers use them a lot. It's like a thing you put on you and it rumbles.
Yeah.
And you feel a rumble of the bass. I might get one. Like
I was looking initially at Porter and Davies, who make the butt kicker for drummers. They make like a platform that you can stand on.
I heard really good things about it, though. I know it seems like an absolute gimmick, but everyone says it's really good.
With James, his engineer would want the onstage volume to be kind of quiet, so I wouldn't have I had an EBS like two by 12, like two separate 12 inch speakers to like by my hip, basically, so I could feel some low end, but it wasn't very loud. It wasn't like I had a big like 8x10 behind me or anything like that.
I love that. I love having the fridge. That's class, like when you're at a festival.
Me too. That's it. It's literally what I was going to say. Yeah, that was the one time that I got to actually experience those, when we were playing festivals, and particularly with going back to key bass, to synth bass. Like, all you want to do as a bass player is feel those low end frequencies. So if you're playing a synth bass and you're on ears and you don't have a wedge as well on the floor, then that can be can make you feel a bit disconnected.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you're not feeling the power, even though you're. How big is the PA system at the Opera House? It's thousands of watts, and you're pushing out those thousands of watts, but you're not really feeling that power. Like,
yeah, I remember for one of the Turn and Pirate New Year's Eve shows. It might have been the first one I did, and it was my first experience playing with Lisa Hannigan, and I obviously had the amp like cranked or something on stage at the time. And Lisa was like, can we just kind of maybe look at bringing the volumes down a bit? And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. And I was like, rolled all the low end out of my bass. Like, it was about doing what was right for the song. But I don't know if you've had that experience where you're in a room, maybe that's like super resonant with certain bass frequencies, and the singer can't hear themselves naturally enough. So, when you turn, like, if you leave your tone where it is, aside from the low end, and pull all the low end out, it kind of just feels like you feel like a dog with your tail between your legs, I find, in those circumstances.
Yeah,
like,
I actually do that as to bring my volume up sometimes. If the lad's like, there's not, or if I feel I don't have enough presence or volume, I actually give myself more bass and not more volume, and it fixes it.
Yeah, you can feel it better then. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't really have that. My first big gig was in the band. We did this like Battle of the Bands for Glastonbury. We only had an EP at the time, so my first thing I did. Big thing was playing Glastonbury, so I was like, wow, I was amazed by it, because it's like 1,000 acres, and we did 7 gigs at it, like, so like, because we went over, like, we got the one gig on the BBC stage, but me and the drummer Jeff, we got like a satchel of cans. Do you know the satchel that your tent comes in? You know, the kind of thing that you can put over your shoulder, or camping bags come in. So we filled one of them each up with cans, and we just walked around the whole site. I went to all the stages, and we got 6 more gigs just doing that, like,
just by going to the stages.
Yeah, Glastonbury, every stage is the picnic is the same, but a bit more strict. Everyone has their own autonomy over their stage and what they do, like. Yeah. So they gave us slots. We got gigs, no bother. Extra gigs.
That's insane.
6 extra gigs, and class, great crack. And so I definitely appreciate that. But now, after a few years doing it, you don't appreciate it as much. But since it was my first time playing any kind of big show, was going to that big festival, I definitely was amazed by it. Like,
that's unbelievable. What was it? Did you, like, when you got those extra 6 gigs, were you offered like payment for any of those gigs? Or was
no, not a chance. Yeah. You never get paid. Sure, we didn't even get paid for the gig we did, I don't think.
That was actually part of the reason why I decided to be a session bass player, because there's so much less responsibility. You just have to be responsible for yourself, and regardless of whether 5 people show up to the gig or 500 people show up to the gig, you're still getting paid. Yeah,
no, it's a tough slog, the original band scene. But sure, it's completely wrong anyway, the way the festivals are run. Like, why are people at the festival? To see the band.
To see music.
Who are the only ones at the festival that don't get paid? The bands.
I know, yeah. I remember, I'm trying to think what It was, but I think I played in a band when I was coming up in Dundalk. I played in a band called Take the Money and Run, and we definitely played some sort of gig that Crow Black Chicken played as well. I think it might have been, maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it might have been the hot press was called like something Tiger or Tiger something. It was in Mullingar.
Oh, geez, we didn't do much. We've never really done much with hot press, to be honest. So I'm not sure. Apart from Pat Carty, Pat wears the kind of cowboy hat.
Yeah.
He gives us a little. He throws us in wherever he can, but we wouldn't be that cool, to be getting in hot press all the time. They don't really have spreads on blues rock bands too often.
Yeah. What are you guys working on at the moment?
Nothing, just downtime because we're just doing absolutely nothing. So we were supposed to be in England this week. Obviously, we're not going to be. Then it was April, and now it's November. So nothing. I'm just practicing away and doing my own thing at the moment, sure. But once gigs come back, we're a live band, really, so we'll get back at it then,
How many hours a week would you spend practicing, do you think, or have you bass in your hand every single day?
Well, I went through a bad period there for about 6 months where I didn't practice at all, and then I was talking to Rennie Floxenhauer. Do you know the guy who does the videos for his episode will probably be out before this one. Do you know the guy who does the bass in Bass the World? That YouTube channel. Yeah, he has a big, really nicely sculpted beard, much better than mine. Because I was talking to Niwe to Sumba. Do you know Niwe? He's like a Congolese guitarist, lives in Dublin.
I don't know him.
We had a big chat on Zoom, and I was telling him my practice routine before I hit the slump. I was like saying it was broken into like 15-minute segments, 15-minute scales, 15 minutes doing this and that, and he was like, "That's crazy, man. How can you practice like that?" And then I started rethinking it, and then Rennie was saying he just practices to the drum beat for like 2 hours, taking out like bars of the beat to improve his internal pulse.
Internal clock. Yeah,
I just started doing that, and I'm really enjoying it. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been practicing about 2 hours a day doing that, and I find it's much more rewarding than. But it's probably because there's no gigs. Like, I'm just enjoying doing that. And before, I was woodshedding scales and stuff, but I knew I had 2 or 3 gigs at the weekend coming up. So I suppose that's why I got sick of practicing the way I was.
I think it's about, though, like whatever works for you, because what you're saying there about like doing 15 minutes of practice of this and then moving on to something else for 15 minutes, that like shows serious amount of focus to be able to do that, and to commit to something for that space of time. Yeah, I've never really been a big practicer, which has come back to bite me in the arse a couple of times. But
well, not really. Like you're one of the top session guys in Ireland, so has there been some times where you felt like you weren't ready, or you should have had more chops than you expected?
Never ever in like an actual an original session world.
I wouldn't think so. Like when it comes to slap bass, like I'd be telling people, like you don't really. I probably, someone will probably prove me wrong, but I don't think you're ever going to get asked to do something complicated with slap bass at a paid gig. Like maybe one pop or slap, but that's easy. But to do something crazy, I don't think you're ever going to get asked to do it on a paid gig.
No. I think the only time I've ever slapped a bass in a professional capacity was like, You Can Call Me Al in a cover gig. You know what I mean?
That song, yeah.
But like none of the like artists or acts that I've played with has ever required that. But so when I say it comes back to bite me in the arse, I remember playing with a cover band called I haven't gigged in so long that my brain has just gone to mush. Jesus. Sophistafunk. They're like a funk and soul kind of cover band. And Tommy Gray, who's the drummer in Bark, who we were talking about earlier, Tommy's a drummer, and I had only met him a couple of times, and I was like a huge fan of him as a person and as a drummer. He's phenomenal. And it was that kind of thing of not necessarily wanting to impress him, but just wanting to, do a good job.
Yeah.
And I just had a nightmare on the gig. Like I was just making mistakes everywhere.
Really?
Yeah. And it was just the kind of thing that if I'd spent some more time, like, working on right hand stamina or whatever, that stuff, when you build that up by putting in the hours rehearsing, it just stays in you, I think, and I didn't really do that. So I eventually was like, I can't do this. I'm just going to take the pick out and just play with the pick. And I know that I can do fancy stuff with playing with the pick because I'm not going to trip over my fingers. But that was like, I don't think he even noticed, you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing that only you notice your mistakes unless they're really, really bad. And if they're really bad, you just do them again the second time in the same spot in the bar, and then it's not a mistake. You meant to do it.
Yeah, but so you're not practicing much at the moment at all. Then you're just kind of away from
it. Towards the kind of the latter half of last year, myself, a drummer called Fiacre Kinder, Jake Curran, the guitar player I was talking about earlier on, and Luke, what's Luke's surname? Luke Dunford, who's a keys player. The four of us got together and started just like meeting up once a week to jam, like funk and soul tracks, but like, you know, not Superstition. So, you know, kind of off kilter stuff just for ourselves and just for kind of improving our chops. I'm playing you know, kind of 70s and 80s deep cuts. I'm playing Lettuce. You ever listen to Lettuce?
No, I've seen lads doing covers of them on Instagram, but I haven't really listened to them much. Like, they have class bass lines anyway. Yeah,
they're class. But I wasn't really doing much playing at the time, and it was really, really good to be playing with those guys because they're all killer. So it meant that I had to kind of up my game. So that's why I was learning What Is Hip, the Tower of Power song. So that was really enjoyable because we were all actually spending some time practicing by ourselves and then coming in and just playing together, but playing for ourselves, you know, not, well, we'll have to learn this song for a cover gig or for a wedding or whatever. So that was really enjoyable. But yeah, I don't, since I left BIMM anyway, because I would have had to have spent time practicing for exams and stuff like that, I don't really do any practice.
And you don't teach at all, really? That's not something you've gone into or are going to go into?
Not really, no. I don't know if I would have the patience to teach beginners, and then I don't think I'm good enough to teach intermediate.
I'm sure you definitely are. I just finished. I'm doing a bass course for music generation Tipperary. I'm just about finished the videos now. It was tough, like, to make the whole course and for the beginners, like, but the intermediate thing, it would be another thing altogether. Then you'd have to come up with all these fancy things to show them.
Yeah, was that all online?
The course, it's all videos, but they're not out in public. They have to sign up to it. So I made 50.
Will that? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's all online. Yeah, at the moment anyway. There will be meetups once we're allowed, like, with all the bass players who are involved. Like, but it's all online videos. I made like a full program without any copyrighted music. So I made all the backing tracks, keyboards and guitar and.
Fair play.
All this stuff, like, and it was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. It was crazy.
Will that then translate to in-person teaching then when that can happen again?
Well, I do my own private lessons anyway, so I'm always, but I don't get. There's very little demand for private bass students around where I am anyway. Like,
okay,
I think people just don't understand the instrument, and we're trying to get the word out, like, about bass, like, because learning bass is a lot more theory heavy than learning guitar. Like, I've taught a good bit of beginner guitar, and it's just chords and you're teaching songs, but if you teach someone that on bass, you won't really have taught them how to play the bass. You have to teach them theory and rhythm and stuff.
I did a few lessons with Louise. What's Louise's surname?
The girl from the Blizzard.
Doesn't work anymore.
The girl from the Blizzard.
Exactly. Louise Carroll. Yeah. So I had done a bunch of gigs with her where she was singing backing vocals with CC Brez. Do you know Brez?
Yeah, funk kind of funky kind of stuff.
I used to play guitar in Republic of Loose. And Louise, basically, she'd got that gig with the Blizzards playing bass, and she'd never really played bass before, but was a guitar. She knew how to play guitar. So
I didn't know that. I know she's a psychologist or something. Is that her main profession?
I think she's a child psychologist, maybe. But she's also.
She'd be good one to get on to talk about, like, stage fright or imposter syndrome or something like that.
Oh, she's killer, yeah. She's a composer for film as well. She's
deadly.
She does finger in many pies. But when she approached me about teaching her some stuff prior to her playing with the Blizzards, I kind of just focused on, like, economy and movement mainly, you know, and tone in terms of, like, playing an A on the E string at the fifth fret, or playing an open A, and when you should do, you know, one or the other. But yeah, teaching, I never really thought about it. I did teach one class. I depped one class in BIMM last year, last minute, which was good because they were first years, but they were all. It's easy to teach to a class of people who want to be taught how to play the bass, you know.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, a kid who his parents are forcing them to do it, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about teaching. Maybe.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff I'm focused on is I'm trying to explain when to use your four-finger technique or when to use like what I call groove position. You know, when you just use your first finger, your second finger, and your pinky, and you stay. So, because a lot of guitar players playing guitar is different to bass in that way. Like you should really use one finger per fret most of the time on the guitar, but on bass, I don't think you should. It depends on the bass line or the groove or whatever. Like,
totally. Yeah, and it's going to sound different depending on what finger you use to play it. You know what I mean? And how you approach the note once you get into the kind of nitty gritty like that. Yeah.
So yeah, you won't pursue it just yet, but yeah, well, who knows? Like, or how long this will go on? You might get into it. Like, but teaching bass online isn't as bad as teaching guitar because guitar is chordal, so they've got 4 fingers, 6 strings. You have to make sure they put them in the right place. But when you're teaching bass through the internet, there's only 4 strings, and they're not playing them at the same time. You see, so
how do you approach it then? With a newbie, do you approach it from a theory perspective, or do you approach it from like a tab perspective, if you like?
We start with we're using I call it full tab because that's what it's called on MuseScore. So it's tab with rhythm. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So it's exactly like
yeah.
So instead of the rhythms landing on the dots, they land on the numbers in the tab. So I find that's really good because they can visually see the rhythms, but they don't need to be able to read the dots. That's a good kind of middle ground, like. And I'm not a big reader myself, like.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not really big reader myself either. I learned a little bit from my time in BIMM, but I never studied music in school because it wasn't in my school at the time. So what I found though from learning it in BIMM, there's like loads of classic songs that have like similar bass rhythms. So if you can identify that rhythm on a stave, it all begins to kind of make a bit more sense.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they're kind of like the little patterns that you can memorize and maybe plug into your own bass lines. That's with Jamerson, that's really important. Like those little rhythms that he uses a lot, you need to kind of incorporate them into your own language. Like,
yeah, that was kind of the like eureka moment for me in terms of when I figured out what type of bass player I wanted to be. Was learning about Jamerson and like Motown. That's why I bought that P bass, you know. But yeah, he would be my bass hero. Him, and then Pino Palladino, Carol Kay, and Rutger Gunnarsson, who's like the ABBA bass player.
Oh yeah, I'm not really. Well, I've heard ABBA songs. Yeah, they're bass playing in class, but I haven't learned any of these parts. Like,
there's a lot in there. It's really really great. Yeah, ABBA can be quite, for some people, are quite like throwaway. But I kind of came up listening to ABBA because my mom was a big ABBA fan. So I say I'm a big ABBA fan, but the truth is I've never really listened to anything outside of ABBA Gold, you know.
Yeah, and you probably only listen to the bass lines. You're like,
yeah, but it's like a Pantera, you know. I think if you listen to Reinventing Hell, the greatest hits record, you kind of don't need to listen to anything else.
Yeah, it's just a class record. But I love Pantera back in the day. Like, Dime was such a class guitarist. His tone could be a bit off sometimes for metal musicians, but the playing was always spot on. Like,
yeah, he was incredible. Yeah, I would have been listening to that from a guitarist perspective rather than a bass player's perspective. So I'd be interested maybe to go back now and listen to that stuff.
Oh, your man is brilliant, Rex. Like the way he keeps up with the riffs and does some cool stuff. Like,
is he a finger player?
I think he's a plectrum, but no, his finger style. He plays with Zach Wilde now as well. He's usually rocking a Warwick or something like that.
Right. You have a nice collection behind you there.
Yeah, cheap ones, like nothing. The only one that's expensive, well, I got it secondhand, the Aerodyne, I suppose, like, which is, I want to get a second one of them. They do it in like Dolphin Grey as well, so
okay,
I must get one. I'm not too gone. I still can't get my head around the active basses. I have 2 of them, and it's just too many options, and they're too loud if you have them turned up too loud. I have all the stuff up on 10, and I still can't get a good sound out of an active bass, really.
Yeah, my jazz, my Mexican jazz is active, and I always have like the bass cranked the whole way up on that,
Mm.
and then everything else is kind of at the midpoint. But I find if I'm on a gig where I'm like flicking between the two basses, if I play the jazz bass and then go and play the P bass, all of a sudden all that low end is gone, and it feels harder almost to play it, if that makes sense. But yeah, my Music Man is active as well, but I don't really play that much anymore.
I just sold one of those sub 5 strings. Wasn't into it at all. Like, I got this Squire 5 string, and it has absolutely huge string spacing, which is perfect for someone who doesn't play 5 string, because you don't get confused between the strings. And if you just want a 5 string to play some nice kind of open line, not fancy fast stuff, but a song that needs a 5 string, if you get one with the huge string spacing, it doesn't feel as alien as it would if it was like your one. The sub has a very tight, and you get confused, like, oh, I think I'm on the right string. No, I'm playing the wrong one.
Would you be much of a gearhead?
Well, I think most of us, we go through phases, don't we? Like, when I was a teenager, I was into reading about it and getting stuff all the time, but I don't think I am anymore. But people would probably think I am because I have the wall of bass behind me, but I don't think so. Not really. I like messing around with, like, making Franken basses, like stick, say, like the neck off something. I have loads of broken basses. People know me as someone who likes messing around with gear, so they always give me broken stuff and I fix it, like.
Okay. Yeah, I went through the pedal board craze about 4 or 5 years ago, but once I got that P bass, I was like, that's it. I never need anything else. And
have you learned a lot of the Jamerson lines? Like, they're really hard. Like, they're hard to get note for note. Like,
yeah, I remember learning for once in my life, and I would say, in terms of like accuracy to the record, I would say I'm like 95%.
Because it's almost like learning a solo. There's so many notes in it that don't repeat, and it's complicated.
It took me 13 hours of just like solid focus to actually learn it, and I just went through it section by section and just tried to memorize it. But yeah, it's unbelievable. It's just like it's an entire bass lesson in a 3-minute song.
Did you see the Vulpec video that I think was the drummer made it? It's like a graph,
like
showing
a visualization of it. Yeah,
that's class. Like,
it is really good. I would say from my 13 hours that I put into learning it, that he's not 100% on it, but that's okay. But I mean, that's like, I think it's interesting to approach something like that, because Jamerson's whole thing was improv. So if I spent 13 hours learning his bass line note for note, it's not really in the spirit of what he was trying to achieve, you know?
No.
But I think there's a lot to learn from it, just from learning how he approaches things.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have picked those notes if you were over intellectualizing it, because some of them aren't in the key, like, or any relative key or anything, like.
Yeah. Oh, he's like the king of like chromatic movement. But obviously it all comes from him like being a double bass player initially, so he's just playing in like open position and first and second position all the time, and is never really playing up the fretboard all that much. But yeah, I just don't think you can't really go wrong by learning some of his stuff.
And do you use the pedals much anymore, or is it just gathering dust in the corner, like?
A lot of them were sold. Yeah, my pedal board basically consists of a tuner, a compressor, a Sans amp, and then I have a Pog 2, a chorus pedal which gets used every now and then my favorite pedal, which never gets any use at all, is this like boutique company, Mr. Black. It's called a Fwonk Beta. It's an envelope filter.
Never heard of it.
It's the best envelope filter I've ever come across. I find with envelope filters, a lot of the time they're a bit weedy.
It's a hard sound to use, though.
I'll send you
in a song or anywhere, because it's so cheesy. Like, it's like, oh, here we go. What did my kids' students call it? The funky duck. It's like, oh, funky duck pedal.
Yeah. I'll send you a link to. I think it's, you know, your man Juan. Is it Juan Alderon? Is that his name? The guy from the Mars Volta.
Is he okay? He had an accident. I don't know what's the story with him. He fell off his bicycle and hit his head.
Yeah, I never followed up. Was it a motorcycle accident?
No, pedal bike. No one else involved. He just fell off, like.
Oh my god. Wow, I didn't know that. But yeah, I'll send you the video of him going through it because it's unbelievable. But as you say, like it's so impractical. Like it's on my board all the time, and it's probably the first thing that I turn on. You know, when I'm just like turning my amp on and making sure the volumes are all right. And it's so much fun, but it never gets used. So I mean, I could have a pedal board that just has a tuner, a compressor, and a preamp, and that'll do it.
Do you put a fuzz in front of it? Because I don't think they sound good unless you put a fuzz in front of the envelope filter.
I don't. I've never tried that.
They sound 100 times better if you put the fuzz before it, and then all the frequencies that you're supposed to be affecting come out. Like.
Okay. Well, as I said, I've tried a few different envelope filters before and was never happy with what I got out of them. So maybe that would have made the difference. I have a Proco Rat distortion pedal, as well, but it's actually the guitar one. So if I ever use that, I use it in conjunction with like I have an electro harmonics boost pedal that has like bass, treble, gain, and volume. So I can just use them in conjunction so that none of the low end goes missing. But again, like when am I ever going to need to use those pedals on any?
I can find an excuse to use them. You know, I'll write this bass line and I'll use this pedal just for the crack.
It has to be used. The bass line doesn't sound right if I don't use that pedal. No, you're totally right.
Yeah, I have a Synth. It's like a Digitech pedal, and it does some crazy synth sounds. And I definitely couldn't do the green one. The green one, yeah. I have two of them. One broke, like, but it's great crack. If you get your hands on one, it does some outrageous sounds. Like,
I have one. When I started playing with Robot Rock, Mark, the drummer, had one, and he gave it to me. So I should probably get back to him at some point.
No, keep it.
Yeah, I have that, and I have the Electro Harmonics bass synth in a box somewhere. Don't use it. A lot of the time, for me, I don't really need synth pedals because I'm playing synth bass most of the time. Now, anyway. But yeah, they're always fun. Do you ever play one of the Mutron synth pedals?
No, never.
They're unbelievable. It's like from the 70s or something like that.
Yeah, they're a huge footprint, aren't they? Like, they're a big, massive thing.
They're enormous, yeah. Keith Farrell in BIMM brought one in one day, and I couldn't get over it. It sounded amazing. Like, when I was 17, 18, I would have been a really big fan of Muse. So, like, the synth tone from, like, Hysteria and stuff like that, I think that's kind of what you get from those kind of pedals.
Yeah, he's class. I have, like, a fake Woolly Mammoth, but it does not sound anything like Chris Wolfenstein's tone. Like, someday I'll get a real one, but they're a bit dear for a fuzz pedal. Yeah,
did you see those Panda Audio make them now, the Deep Impact?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I thought it was the Deep Impact that he uses for all his synth sounds.
Yeah,
usually
they're unreal. They're very expensive though as well.
The reissue is not that dear though. I don't think it's
really
400 or 500 or something.
Maybe less.
Maybe it's still expensive. Yeah, so I'll probably get the HX Stomp as my next thing because everyone says it's a cool thing. It's the pedal to get, like.
Yeah, I've seen that. All right, yeah. Connor has one. A few other people I know have one, and I've been raving about them. And I think the like amp simulation, the preamp simulation on them is really, really good. But I'm like, I plug my P bass into whatever, and it sounds great, and I'm happy enough.
Yeah, it's a bit of effort, isn't it, as well, when you're at home all the time to put the boards take up so much room. It's just like, could you be bothered? Like, yeah. I just use the plugins in Logic. Like, it has like filters and loads of stuff, and you can get whatever sound you want most of the time. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I mean, it's all there, and it's already not taking up space because it's in your laptop already. So
the Bit Crusher is really cool. If you get a Bit Crusher plugin, put it on your bass and some fuzz, you can get some crazy, like, computer game sounding sounds.
Right, okay. Yeah, I'll give it a spin.
They're good to the ear though, because I put up a video of one on Instagram, and I call it like a digital tumbleweed. So when you get no likes or comments, it's the polite way of people saying that was shite. So put up this super bit crunched bass line, and I thought it was great, and it was just like silence. I was like,
yikes!
I guess that wasn't great.
How long have you been at it then, in terms of like kind of the, like, not aside from the podcast, but just like the pursuing the kind of Instagram world?
I just did. Well, my girlfriend Rebecca about 4 years ago just said, "Oh, you should have a profile," and I was like, "Oh, I didn't have any, like, at the time." And I made one, then I just started uploading them, and I'm just kind of busy at the moment because it's kind of it encourages me to play the bass a bit more. I'm like, I want to make a 20-second video So I go on YouTube, transcribe some stuff, and then whatever I take away from it, I'll make 20 seconds of music out of it. So at the moment, it's just a way to get playing the bass, like. But I'm not. I just do it for fun, really, like. And I don't know what is it. What could you really get out of it? Like, some people say you can get gigs out of it, but I've never really been approached by anyone or got that kind of stuff out of it. But it's a fun community, though. There's a lot of people. I find Instagram is very positive. Like, people are encouraging and haven't encountered any trolls or anything like that. So I don't really have any negative things to it, and it doesn't take up too much of my time. I'm not too bad at scrolling through it, like.
Yeah. Well, I recently have had a few likes come in on different videos, and like I'll go on to the profiles as a random Brazilian guy, and it's like followed by Stephen McGrath.
Yeah,
so it's like great that
I follow a good few people, alright.
Yeah, but it's like it fosters that kind of community, you know, and even what you're doing now with the podcast totally does as well. Because even like there's loads of amazing older bass players that, you know, you've been kind of you've interviewed already, that you would, like, for me anyway, I'd know their names. Like, obviously I've known Keith Duffy's name for a long time, but I've only actually met Keith like once, and that was last year. So it's good. Obviously you're never going to be on a gig with another bass player, so I think something like this is really good to keep the community going, you know. Yeah,
I think originally I was just thinking there's all these guys that we know their names, but we never have seen an interview with them, and who's going to do the interview? I said I'll just do it. Like, I'll get the because I want to hear what they have to say.
Is there a reason behind why you've never seen any interviews with all these bass players?
I think we're pretty good, you know. We're grand. Well, other bass players enjoy listening to it. That's the main thing.
That's it.
It's a real niche, you know. Like, but sure, we're all at home at the moment. Like, so once gigs come back, people probably won't be around to do interviews. Like, at the moment, it's like, do you want to do a chat? And everyone's always at home. Like, but
yeah, it's the highlight of my week. There was like nothing else on this week.
That's good. Good to hear, man.
Yeah.
But
no, I definitely like chased the dragon on the Instagram videos, you know, back a couple of years ago. You know, getting the dopamine hit from all the likes coming in. How do you find that?
I'm pretty good on it. Like, what I just post and ghost. Like, it's kind of I'm trying to get up my followers by following other people. So I follow a certain amount every day. Like, but I'm not too. I was really bad. Like, when I used to make, I think what happened was, when I started first, I used to make more complicated videos. Like, I'm not really good at doing loop covers, but I was thinking people would like that. So I learned like Dr. Dre songs and Phil Collins songs, and I did the whole loop and the chords and the melody and the beat, and that's not really my thing. So it used to take me hours. Like, it was the whole week. It was my week's work went into this video, and then I kind of felt like I needed to get something back from it, and it was disappointing if I didn't. But now the videos I'm doing, the 20-second ones, they're just part of my hour-long practice routine. It's not any effort. So if people don't like it, get loads of likes or comments, I don't seem to mind. So I think that's what happened. When I was putting loads of effort into the videos, I felt a bit bad and I didn't get all the love. But now, since I'm not spending all week making them, it doesn't matter. Like, and it's just for fun. Like,
yeah, I find it's about knowing where you find value, and like, as an example, the music that myself and David have been making, the electronic music, we really love it, and it would be great if other people like it too, but we're happy. Rogue Cabasa falling off the shelf there randomly.
It sounded good and it fell, in fairness. Like,
yeah, we're like, once you're happy with something, then, you know, that should be enough, and that's not always the case. And I've definitely in the past, as I said, like, posted a video because I wanted the likes, I guess.
It's hard to admit, though, isn't it? I wouldn't admit that often, like, as you said, chase the dragon. But I'd say I did do it at the start, but it's a cliche. I just do it because I love it. But at the start, maybe I wasn't doing it because I was loving it that much. I was hoping to get a lot of likes and stuff. But
I think for me, anyway, it's been a journey in the last couple of years. When I was talking earlier on about that, like, 3-month period of doing nothing after coming off that first tour with James, I learned a lot about myself in that, because when you are a musician and that's what you do, like, if you're an accountant, you don't get all of your internal happiness from doing people's accounts.
Some,
you know?
Hopefully some do, but probably not all
I hope
accounts.
so. Yeah, I hope mine does anyway.
Probably
yeah,
not.
like,
Anyway, doing accounts for a musician is not that complicated.
that's true. Yeah. Well, yeah. What's 20% of nothing?
Exactly.
No, but I think people working in the arts, like, it's very easy to like take all your value or find all your value in external things, particularly when you're making art, or like, same thing, putting out your videos of you playing, because it's a reflection on you. So I kind of went through a bit of a journey on that, and realizing that I was happy. Eventually realizing that I was happy in my ability. Like, we were talking earlier on about, like, me not practicing. I'm comfortable with the ability I have as a bass player. I could be better. I mean, everybody can always be better, but I could sit down and I could put hours in, and I could, rip through Joe Dart bass lines. But
Yeah.
I never need to do that in a gig context, and I'm happy with what I can do. So once you're comfortable, I mean, you can always be pushing yourself a little bit more, maybe, but if you have, if you can find your validation and your value internally, I think you just become more comfortable anyway, and then you don't have to worry about all those things, like, how many people are going to like your video. Or I've never done the thing of, oh well, nobody liked that, so I have to delete it.
No, I keep them up. Like, all the bad ones
wild.
are still up.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're not really true to yourself, like I was saying, I did a bunch of loop videos, which I got a lot of comments and likes saying they were great. And then someone contacted me and said, will you do a 30-minute solo bass loop performance in the pub for me? And I would just said no, because I don't think I would have done it very well, like, because I put so much work into. They're not really me, like, so my thing is mainly being a rock bass player, like, so, and blues. So I don't think I would have been great at doing that solo bass gig, but I forced myself to do them, but they're not me. I'm happier now just putting up whatever is me, I suppose. I might do a few loops, but I don't see myself performing a solo loop show anytime soon.
Yeah, nobody's going to go to that anyway.
Apparently people do, but I don't know who goes to them.
Yeah, you were talking earlier on about the developing your, like, internal pulse. Have you watched that Victor Wooten video?
No, I've seen a bunch of him. He's very philosophical when it comes to anything music theory, isn't he? Like, he always has a different take on it.
Yeah, he's amazing. Like, when I started in BIMM, I was coming in as like a plec player, like basically a rock bass player, in terms of my styles as well at the time. And I remember, like, on the first day we were going around the room and everybody was asked to, play something, and there was guys playing like Jacko bass lines and Victor Wooten stuff, and I was like, shit, I am out of my depth here. I did my audition was like Serge Duke with Plek, so it's kind of getting into like snobbery, which I don't really believe in, but yeah, getting back to Victor Wooten, there's an amazing video of him talking about developing your internal clock and your internal pulse, and it's that thing you've probably come across, of like having loops of 16 bars or whatever, and you drop a beat of the click
that's what I was saying. I've been working on it at the moment. It's really good. Like,
he goes further on that and talks about, like, setting it up in his house and, like, going, like, wandering around the house from room to room and, like, coming back, like, say it's playing in the kitchen or whatever, coming back and, like, trying to catch the beat.
It's funny, I heard strangely Miles Davis said something about that before, like going out for a cigarette and coming back in on the beat.
Right, okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that. I would say that's probably one of the things that I'm good at, is my timing. At least I'd like to think so anyway. But then you see yourself on a grid in your DAW and you're like, Jesus, that could be better.
Yeah, that can be embarrassing, but sure, humans don't play on the grid anyway. Like, so when people, anyone who's good at making drums on their music software, they always move the hits slightly off the grid to make it sound more human. Like,
more human, yeah, that's important, definitely.
Yeah, and how would you find recording as opposed to? Have you done much like on Vincent, all those bands, you're the session touring basis? Do you play on the albums as well, or do? Not
really, no. With James, he more often than not puts stuff down himself. His last album, True Care, there's like 2 or 3 songs that I played on that. And then there's another girl I play with, Sorcha Richardson. I've played on some of her newer stuff, but she did her first album with friends in LA, so I didn't get the call for that one. I haven't
nice
done
if you got a trip to LA,
I,
wouldn't it? Free holiday.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I would do it for free, absolutely, yeah. I've played on. There's a guy from the north, Kieran Lavery. He's like a singer-songwriter. He's won the Northern Ireland Music Prize a couple of times, and I've played on his last two albums, which came through a producer called Rory Cushnan, who's in Dublin now. Rory was like based in London for years and like worked on George Michael records back in the 90s, and he's mixed like Ed Sheeran records and what's that band? I always forget their name. Of Mumford and Sons. Mumford and Sons.
They should have been called Of Mumford and Sons. That would have been.
Yeah, I was mixing them up with Monsters and Men, but yeah. So I can't remember how it was all based out of Camden recording studios. I can't remember how I ended up working with Rory, but he got me in for some stuff. But yeah, I do enjoy studio stuff, but it just doesn't come up that often. More often than not, I'm just in the live context.
Cool. So if people want to check you out, is it Instagram? Is that where you hang out mainly?
Yeah, at Joe Furlong Bass.
And the Cope is the band you're coming out with.
Yeah. There's not that many bass lines, which you may not expect for a band that consists of two bass players.
You're against that. You're like, let's freak people out. No bass lines.
Well, yeah. We were using everything's like an analog synthesizer on the record, so for the most part, it is like what I was saying earlier on about just the synthesizers covering the low end frequencies of the root notes or whatever. There's like maybe 2 or 3 songs that have actual bass lines, like synth-based bass lines on them. But yeah, the Cope is what that project is called. There's no like social media or anything for that yet. But yeah, Instagram mainly. I had a website, but I just never actually ever used it. So I think that has expired. I think
or you didn't even check. It just died on its own.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But yeah, that's mainly it. Instagram now. Yeah.
Cool, yeah. I'll put up the links and yeah, cheers for coming on, man. And I'm sure gigs will come back near the end of the year and you'll be back in the Sydney Opera House.
I hope you're right.
Well, Vicar Street anyway. When do you do that turning point? Oh, that's New Year's Eve. So
that's New Year's.
I think we're safe to say you'll get to do that gig.
I hope so. I mean, as the year was coming to an end last year, I think everybody's like, oh, we'll be back playing by summer, and now it's like, well, hopefully everything will be back by September or October. So I really don't know, but to be honest with you, I don't stress about that stuff because it's all out of our control, you know.
Exactly.
So
you can't.
There's no point in getting stressed about it. It'll come back when it comes back, and we'll be delighted for it to be back.
Cool. Well, if I could make it to that New Year's Eve gig, I will. Like, you know, I used to play a lot on New Year's Eve, but in the last few years we didn't. So that sounds deadly. Like, how is it? 4 hours long? Is it? Yeah,
usually around like the doors open at like 8. First song is usually around 8:30, 8:45, and then we're leaving the stage at like 1:30.
Sounds good. You better have your chops ready for that one.
Yeah.
Get in the shed.
It's not like I don't have time. I've got nothing but time.
Get into the shed, get practicing.
Yeah.
Bye.